Hi, everybody. It's Judi Glova, and welcome to the first day of the Burnout Solutions series. And I've collected some of the best experts for you because they're going to teach you all about how to have your own burnout solution. So I'm excited because today is all about awareness, knowing your strengths and your burnout blind spots, whether it's on your business, mental health, physical, spiritual levels, so that you can let go of some of the habits and behaviors that are holding you back. I want to remind you that we are meeting every day throughout this online series in our Facebook group, and the Facebook group is called the More Than Enough Women's Circle. I'll be live in the evening, so don't miss out daily to hear my recap and highlights. Plus, I'll answer any questions. I want to make sure that you can take action on the tools and skills you've learned each day. So, if you haven't already, head over to the More Than Enough Women's Circle. Now, let's kick things off with Dr. Carrie Schaefer. Cari is the best-selling author, healthcare expert and provider, and lecturer on health and nutrition. She has a master's degree and a doctorate degree in traditional Chinese medicine and is a national certified herbalist and health practitioner for over 17 years. She's helped thousands of people identify and remove the barriers blocking them from feeling their best. And what I love about Cari is that she's the real deal. At age 32, she had to overcome her own health crisis. She was challenged to walk 3 blocks due to extreme fatigue, constant pain, and depression. She learned firsthand the limitations that poor health can create. And she's learned throughout her training and personal health journey how to help others to achieve a real solid foundation of high quality health. So now I would really love to turn this over and talk about Cari, Dr. Cari. But I really also want to mention that the focus of this interview is all about how we're going to transform the pains of your past so that they are not contributing to the burnout today. And Cari, hi. I just have to tell you, I love what you do. And I also want to just welcome you. But also my first question is, from your point of view with the clients and patients that you treat, why do you think there is this underlying epidemic of overstress and burnout?
Yeah, it's a good question. There's multiple answers, right? I wrote a book on nutrition because we have to have a good solid foundation nutrition, and so many people are eating food that are loaded with so many chemicals that they're not getting the good nutrition that the body needs. Women tend to skip meals. They use it as a weight loss plan, and that's problematic as well. So those are 2 factors that play a role. But what drives those choices, right? What drives us towards skipping meals and overworking and over pushing comes from what I call our outdated survival program. And I've been on my own health journey, right? So you described how at 32 I completely crashed. I'm an Aries. I'm a type A personality. I'm a go girl.
Uh-huh.
I've had to really learn how to slow it down because when I had that health crash, I didn't have a choice.
Right.
And so when I work with clients moving into LA, the area where I work now, women are really, they're out there wanting to make a difference in the world. They're working really hard, and they're also playing these multiple roles.
I'm
Right?
curious about one thing, Dr. Cari, is when you, at 32, were you already learning about health and the impacts of it? It was almost like you were learning what you needed to have yourself.
Yeah. So my first health challenge started at 17, and I was diagnosed with something called SIBO. Not SIBO, excuse me. I was diagnosed with irritable bowel, which we now know is SIBO. But back then we were told we just had to live with it. And so that's what I did. And that contributed to, at 32, when I got exposed to a couple other things, having this big health crash. And yes, so it absolutely played a huge role. And I was in Chinese medical school when that crash happened. And when I was in Chinese medical school, Chinese medicine wasn't able to help me. That's why I know I was trying, the herbs, I was seeing an acupuncture. It's an amazing medicine, but in my case, it wasn't helping me, which meant I had to look elsewhere. And the first place that I came to is a technique called neuroemotional technique. And neuroemotional technique is a technique that helps us identify this outdated survival programming that is causing us to make the choices we're currently making, that is driving us to be in what I call push, living our life from push rather than from that easeful flow.
Yeah. And I just want to interrupt you 1 second, because I want people to remember that, you know what, medicine, there's all different types of medicine. And we've even been raised with the outdated thinking that there's only, one kind of medicine to follow. So it's like, we have to take 100% responsibility for our health. And, whether it's finding, Eastern, Western medicine, looking at our emotional state, like all the different levels of health, right? It's mental, emotional, physical, spiritual, right? It's being able to really look at all of those. So I love that you're pointing that out. And I want everybody to peek up and remember that. That's a really important piece.
It's actually how I work with clients now. We do the basic dietary stuff. We do the straight up, functional medicine stuff. I'm always using Chinese medicine as my background. And we're also looking at the emotional and spiritual component, because it plays such a huge role. Even how we are in relationship to our dis-ease, right? Because if we're in fear, we often make choices that actually are harmful to the system and contribute to the system not being well. When we're in a place of acceptance and love, not acceptance that I'm always going to be this way, but acceptance that this is where I'm at right now, and we listen and we make choices from listening rather than from that fear-based being driven, then we make choices that are actually beneficial and guide us and help us on the road. And that takes us back to that outdated survival programming, right?
Right.
We're afraid of our basic survival, or we're trying to get love, or we're trying to meet somebody else's expectation of us. There's an underlying stress that is driving the choices that we're making that lead us into some of these health challenges and keep us stuck there.
Right. And I don't want to oversimplify it, but I think in some ways people may relate to, like, and I get this way, I get on autopilot. And when I'm in autopilot, I know fear is driving me. Like, I'm not present. I'm not really paying attention. So it's almost like an, like you're in between a rock and a hard place, because it's like, oh, I'm on autopilot and I'm not conscious. But in order to fix what I've got, I've actually got to get conscious and present. Yes. So in some ways, if we can train ourselves to get to notice when we're on autopilot, it actually can help us, like, really pay attention.
Right. So one of the things that a lot of people struggle with is their relationship with food. So let's use that as an example, because
great example.
People understand that, right? You're walking to that refrigerator and you're gonna get that piece of cake, and you know that that piece of cake isn't actually going to serve you in the big picture, right? You've been working with it long enough. And so what I ask people to do is exactly what you say, and I'll tell you why. There's actually a reason from a biochemical perspective that I tell you to do this. You're walking towards to get that cake. Just pause for a minute and get curious about why you're going to get the cake, and get curious about what aspect of your personality is driving that decision choice. Because one of the things with outdated survival programming is the first number one rule is it has nothing to do with who you are. It is not you. It is an old neurological program that is running that usually was created in childhood. So our nervous systems are designed to keep us safe, right? And if there are no flaws in the human body, but if there were one, our nervous system tends to remember negative more than it remembers positive, because the negatives are the things that can harm us.
Right.
When we're little, the experiences that we're having are experiences that depend on our survival. Well, nowadays, it doesn't necessarily determine our survival, but from a neurochemical perspective, it still feels that way. Right. So, child, let's say you had an alcoholic parent. I'm going to use a really obvious example, right? Who was violent when they were drunk. Well, then you as a child might learn to either make yourself very, very small to stay out of the way, or you might learn to try to please to keep that person happy. Now in life, you've got your job and you're doing everything you can to try to please your boss, and you're in over push and over care, and you're trying to please your partner, and you're trying to please your kids.
Mm-hmm.
All of that is a push that spends energy that could be being used towards healing and towards proper sleep and
Mm-hmm.
choices towards our food, that is getting spent in this other way, in this push towards keeping others happy, because when you were a child, that was essential. So every time you're in a situation where you feel like you have to keep someone happy, this neurochemistry gets literally released in your system and activated, and now you've lost freedom of choice. Your frontal neocortex, the wise you, goes offline, right? And your limbic brain, the emotional you, goes online, and you've lost freedom of choice.
Got
right?
it.
So now you're in overwhelm, and you're walking towards that refrigerator getting that piece of cake because the little girl is feeling like she's failing. She can't keep all these people happy. It's scary. Her boss was mean to her today, right? And then she's getting that cake to self-soothe, because very often as children, the happy moments were around cake and ice cream and sweets, right? So we're going to self-soothe, only it's not really going to self-soothe, right? We're going to wake up feeling bad about ourselves, judging ourselves, and reactivating that part of us that doesn't feel like we're enough to keep ourselves safe and make everybody happy. And it just self-perpetuates.
Right. So the way I relate to that too, it's kind of like, you know, the little child in me takes over, and the emotions of that little child, I mean, it overrides the logic of the frontal lobe, right? So it's like that little child is going to say, "Oh yeah, I'm taking over," and it's because like, you know, I want cake now, and and when we don't actually pause, and it is you have to train yourself. I mean, and it's an emotional need that you're filling, right? It's not a hunger need, but your brain makes you think, or that limbic brain, that little kid brain makes you think that you're hungry. You're hungry for something, and something's got to fill that. I can totally relate to that. And in terms of emotional intelligence development, it's also about learning to pause. It's like the power of the pause is so important. Right. So that's what I'm hearing you're saying, and I totally, that's my experience too. It's so important.
So from a biochemical perspective, what happens is when one of these outdated survival programs get activated, they're not you. It's a neurochemical program that literally makes you do things. You have a lot of choice, and it's coming from this limbic brain. So what we need to do is we need to get, so I always call it who's driving your car. So at that moment, that programming that was usually laid down 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, those are the most common years I see, right? And it has the intelligence of a 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7-year-old. So it's really actually great to get curious and figure out the age, because if it's a 2 or 3-year-old that programming was laid down, then what choices does it have? Tantrums, right? Crying. I mean, it doesn't have a lot of choices for expressing its needs. If you ever had a friend who would throw tantrums, they're probably in a 2 or 3-year-old neurochemical program at that moment.
Wow. Right. Yes.
To see it differently and then be able to meet it differently. So you want to get, the way that, so we've got limbic brain that's taking over, now driving the car. There's a movie called Inside Out. It's a beautiful
yes, I love that movie. Yes.
So who's driving the car at that moment? Who's in the control? So that one's driving. We need to lovingly get that one off the steering wheel and get frontal brain back on the steering wheel. And the way that we do that is we impose, you've already said it, curiosity. We put curiosity into the picture. I'm walking to the refrigerator. I'm going to pause. Why am I going to the refrigerator right now? What am I doing? The minute that you do that, you're now taking frontal neocortex, and you are starting to create communication between the limbic brain and the frontal neocortex. When you start to do that, you start to override that limbic response. The more you do that, you're actually creating new neural pathways. They've shown this in research. NET has done research, neuroemotional technique has done research on it, where more neural pathways get developed between those two centers.
Right.
The more you do it, more neural pathways that develop, the faster this comes up online, right? And the quicker that neurochemistry is shut off. So the less we're at the effect of that old programming. Now, one thing that the biggest mistake that people make with this is they try, again, Inside Out, the movie, there's this scene, if you haven't seen it, see it. I mean, it's just so sweet. But there's this scene where Joy is taking, I think it was sadness, and she's decided that she can't get rid of sadness. She tried that. So she's going to put sadness in this little square on the floor, and that sadness is red, right? But literally what we do with these parts of ourselves that we don't like, we try to get rid of them. We try to psych them out. We try to do everything to abolish them. And what I'm going to say to you is that's actually not really possible. And every time we try to get rid of it, fix it, we're actually reactivating that chemistry because we're rejecting it. And most of those programs have at their core, I'm not good enough, right? There's something wrong with me, right? It's my fault. So every time we use our frontal brain just be like, no more, you're going to go away, we get mad at it, we reactivate this. I learned this with a little boy sitting in my clinic who had gone to a dentist and had been traumatized. The dentist had walked in the room without saying hello and had stuck a needle in him and had knocked him out and then had put him in a straitjacket and done oral surgery.
Wow.
And afterwards, he became so afraid of all authority. And his mom would come in to see me, and she had been seeing me for a while, and suddenly he would have none of it. He would not come in the door. He would throw such a fit.
Wow.
It kept going on. And so finally one day I said to the mom, can we just try something? Let's do a little NET using you and see what's up for him. Because we kept saying, you don't have to be afraid. You don't have to be afraid.
Right. But the logic didn't make any sense to him because it was his emotional system that was running.
The thing. So we kept saying, you don't have to be afraid. You don't have to be afraid. And we did a little NET and it came up. It wasn't fear. He was pissed. And he was in the middle of like, no. And I look at him, I go, are you angry? And he's like, he stops and he's like, and I said, you have every right to be angry. That was not okay what that doctor did. It was not okay. And from that day, he started to get better. So what I realized in that moment that all this like trying to get rid of or trying to convince those parts of us they didn't need to feel that way wasn't effective. What that programming actually needs is something it never got way back when. It needs to be acknowledged.
Got it.
Start with the curiosity to understand it better. What am I actually feeling? What's the age sense I get? What am I trying to do by doing this behavior, right?
Right.
And then once we get a general idea, the next step to that is we acknowledge that part of our brain and we accept that there's a part of our brain that has that memory and that program. And we do it almost like we're talking to a little kid. Love, and we get the acceptance just as it is.
Yes, because like what you said before, I just want to connect the dots for everybody because you're making like so many great, key messages here. And one of the things that you said is that by rejecting it, you're just building it. You're just making it stronger.
Yes.
So the antidote, it's like the secret antidote is actually to accept it and love it. And it's even like within our burnout, we basically reject ourselves for doing, we did it again, we did it again. And it's like, well, no, you can't use logic or you can't reject things like that. You actually have to heal it by loving it and accepting it and having a conversation.
Right.
Okay.
Literally with yourself. So you're in burnout, you're pushing, you did it again, you over pushed, you crashed. You go, okay. Hi, sweetie. Hi, the one who so wants to get it right. I totally see you. And if you look at them as these little kids,
Mm-hmm.
That these are the parts that are holding us back. They're getting in our way. So we so don't like them. But look them as little kids who are actually hurting and who are actually trying so hard. It makes it so easy to just see that little 3-year-old that we used to be and go, oh my God, she is so cute. And look how hard she's trying. And oh, sweetie, it's okay. I get why you feel like you have to do that. And guess what? You don't have to, like, and you literally create a relationship. Now, when you're doing this, you're sort of playing this game, you're creating those neural pathways. There's actually something that you're doing, right, physically. And so what will happen is you'll start to notice, oh, she just got activated. And then you can go like, oh, okay, so what is she trying to tell me? That's the next step, right? What is she trying to tell me? She's noticed, oh, she's scared. Okay, well, why is she scared? Is this person, oh, this person's a little bit like her mom. Okay, that's good information to have so that when you're working with this person, you're really present to the fact that they trigger some of your old mom stuff, right?
Right.
Different choices. You might set clearer boundaries. You might just do things a little bit differently so they can actually then become helpful. And at some point you get to say, thank you, I've got this. You can go outside and play now.
Yeah. And it's like that little boy that looked at any authority figure as, that dentist, even though it wasn't the dentist anymore, he was still living in the past.
Yes.
And it was just on automatic pilot. But when you actually brought him into a present state and were able to get curious with him or train him how to get curious and ask the questions, that really helped support him. And I also want to just point out too, when it comes to, the clients that I work with, a lot of times women don't like to admit that they're angry and pissed off and frustrated. It's like, I'll say something like, wow, you're really pissed. And it's like, no, I'm not pissed. Yeah. And it's like, you're pissed. It's like, it's okay to be upset. It's all right to be angry.
Yeah. I'm a closet, like, hide that anger one. It wasn't safe when I was a child to be angry.
Yeah.
And so I had learned so much to be, that people would be like, you're an Aries, you're so like smooth and like, you didn't even know, but I had this like this sternness to me, and it was that anger, and it was so buried in me, I didn't even know it was there until something came into my life that just, I couldn't like ignore it anymore. And I have to tell you, that buried anger is one of the biggest drains to our health of anything, because I'm sure a lot of your clients, very powerful women, right? And the reason we're burying our anger is because we're powerful, and when we're pissed, it can be big. And that bigness as a child was not okay, right? But think of how much energy it takes to suppress yourself. Are you
so much,
right? It takes so much energy. All that energy is being drained from healing ourselves and regeneration and repair. This is where a lot of burnout comes from. It's when our authentic self is being squashed because we perceive in some way, shape, or form it is not safe. Right?
Yeah. And it's not okay. Yeah. And it's not okay to have all of our emotions. It's like, it's almost like, those emotions that you think, that list of emotions that you think aren't okay, like that's a place to start.
Right, exactly.
Like if you don't know what's driving that little kid, that little, programming, it's probably all those emotions that you think are not allowed and not okay. And that, are not acceptable as, a professional woman, and you shouldn't do that. Especially, again, I come back to how as women we are told that, oh, you're the B word,
right?
And it's like, oh, we don't want to be called that, and because that also suppresses us, but we want to be strong and powerful. And I do think that it's giving us, there's tools as well to learn how to be powerful and pissed, and still get the message across. Yeah.
Well, and I think the B word comes out when women are trying to push it rather than being their authentic, powerful self, because we get rigid, we get hard. When I was in the film industry prior to this, some of the worst bosses I had were women. They were just nasty.
Wow.
I can well-deserved, titles, and I think that's, we didn't have role models. And we've gone into this world, and this is what I really think is up for women right now, to learn to be in the world a new way. And we don't have role models because we are burning out, and we're all going like, I can't do it from this place of push anymore. So finding our power as a woman is super important to not burning out, because our power means that when we know and we're comfortable with our no, we don't have to fight to say no. Right? I was just talking with a woman, and she was talking about the men and how nobody listens to her. And I said, well, let's maybe change your focus. There might be something in the world where women are less than and put down and all that. Yes, I'm not saying there isn't.
Right.
Our job is to learn how to be heard. Our job isn't to get angry and push back at that, because that's not going to get us where we want to be. So how do I make it so that that man listens to me? What do I have to do to carry the command and power within myself so that I'm heard? And I guarantee you, it is not, yelling and screaming. And I mean, maybe that works, but it certainly doesn't work for us.
Right. Yeah. And I think there's a difference too between, as you said, pushing and like yelling and having a lot of volume. Because I think that sometimes we just need to have volume and not push it at people. Because I totally believe that the energy that your words ride on is super important. And like you said, when you sit in the power that you are, instead of having to prove the power or push it forward. So to me, what you're saying is like, as a feminine, strong woman, it's like, own the fact that you know your stuff and you know that this isn't okay. And when you come from a place of knowing, it's almost like, people do hear it. Like that vulnerability, it's even a bit of vulnerability when you know something and you're really claiming it and standing in it. It's scary. It's scary for us to do that. But the more we do it, the more power we have and the less push. Like that's what I'm hearing you say.
Totally. Again, I had another young girl I was talking with, and she was saying that, at her job, the men they always talk down to her because they're programmers and she's marketing. And I said, sweetie, they're experts at programming, but I guarantee you know more about marketing than they do. So stand in where your expertise is. I don't try to be an expert at computer stuff. I'm not. I don't try to be an expert at programming. I'm not. I don't even try to be an expert at, Western medicine. I'm not. But I do know where I'm an expert. And I stand in that certainty of where I really know. And if there's an area where I'm not, then I decide whether I want to become an expert in that area or not, right? I'd rather refer and let somebody else be an expert in that area. Like my practice, I don't do acupuncture anymore. And everyone's like, you don't do acupuncture anymore. And I'm like, no, because I couldn't be an expert in all the other modalities, in the emotional component that I work with, in nutrition, in the stress, finding the stress on the system. I couldn't be an expert in that and remain an expert in acupuncture. So I let acupuncture go and I refer to expert acupuncturists, right?
Wow.
To own our expertise. And our expertise might just be being best that we are, the best I that I am, right?
Yes.
Nobody else is me.
That's right. And I just want to reiterate a point that you made before about, having role models. And you're an amazing role model, because I want to point this out. The feminine way, right, is to own what it is that you have and collaborate, right? You don't have to be everything. We try to be everything. And what you just said is that you made a choice. You stand in your power of what you really know works and what's true for you. That way you can help as many people as possible. And yeah, you know what? Acupuncture may work for some people. And you don't have to be everything, right?
I use acupuncture.
Yeah, right.
It's great. It's lie on that table and get to relax and put your body in heal. It is amazing. I love it. I just don't do it anymore because I couldn't be at every seminar, right? I study. I couldn't learn everything. So yeah, really. And then while we're learning an expertise in a thing, Learn to be an expert at being you.
Well, again, I just have to acknowledge you about being a great role model in this type of, not even in the work that you do, but just another role model for women, because we need to understand that we don't have to do it all. And that, even your health, it has multiple facets to it. And it isn't just one way, but we do know certain things about how our health is impacted by our past. And we really want to make sure that our past is not creating our present or our future, and that especially that we want to have that solution of being able to break free. And I think, again, what you said today you've said so many key messages today about, learning about, what is triggering you, having a conversation with it, accepting it, and being able to really come from that place of choice, because when you're offline, you're not at choice. You're on autopilot.
You're at the effect of that old programming, which just isn't serving us anymore. There's so many people that are talking about this same theme, and the piece that I really want to make sure that people register on, and it's the toughest one. People are like, ooh, I can't love that. No. Yeah, it's actually the most important thing. And that's why if you start to identify with it as the little child that you were when it was created, start to see it as separate from who you are and see it as this program, then you might be able to find compassion and acceptance for the fact that it's there, right? You don't have to accept that this is always going to be running my life. That's what I'm talking about. You say, okay, it's there, right? Right? So one of the things that I see women really struggle with is this weight thing, whether they're heavy or not. And so often in our childhood, we were sent messages around needing to look a certain way to be lovable, to be accepted, and that came from school, that could have come from family dynamics, so much of that, right? And that loving it means they have to accept that they're always going to be this way. And that's such a hard piece for women. But where we start with that is we start with loving the little girl who got those weird messages and what it must have felt like for her to probably not be overweight and yet to be feeling like she was and feeling like she wasn't lovable. That's where we start with. It's not about the actual physical manifestation. Right. It's about the part of us that is feeling so un-okay and so ourselves. We look in the mirror. I mean, I talk about this. My big one was my wrinkles when I started getting wrinkles, because I'm not going to do injectables with my health history. That's not an option for me. It would not be good for my health. And so I have to age. And I live in an area where there are not many people that are doing that naturally, right? And so I used to just hate my wrinkles. And before I met my husband, when I had been really sick and I left a relationship and I looked in the mirror and I had these wrinkles that I didn't have at 32. Now I'm 42 and I have wrinkles, and it was such a pain point for me. And I did like online dating for 2 seconds, and every time I was going to go out, I'm pretty honest, I would go out, I would cry because I knew that they were going to take one look at me and they were going to run the other way. And I was really lucky in that the universe gave me the exact opposite reflection, right? But it was such a pain point for me, and a pain point for me, and a pain point for me. And one day I looked in the mirror, and I've been doing my work with her, because it's a little girl inside who feels like if she isn't cute, right, she's gonna not survive. I mean, it keeps like that for me, right? And I looked in the mirror and I saw my wrinkles, and I was like, oh, I noticed that one day I was like okay with them, and then the next day I wasn't. And I was like, oh, so I'm looking in the mirror and I see it and I hear that voice like, oh my God, look at, they're so awful. And I went, oh, hi, sweetie. Oh, hi. I see you. Yeah, it's scary, right? And now my wrinkles are, and I think for me, it has to be something that obvious that would keep me in a relationship with that part of myself, because otherwise I would have just buried her.
Mm-hmm.
right? I've learned to be functional and work with my stuff, right? So in a way, it's this beautiful gift of the universe that's like, no, even this deserves your love. Even
Right.
this, even she deserves your love. And so it's the way that I stay in relationship with that part of myself, and I get reminded about, like, even this
Yes.
is lovable,
Right.
right?
And the underlying, yeah. Oh, sorry. Let me just underline that, because the key message there, which you've said a couple times, is you're not accepting the state. You're accepting the emotion, and you're accepting that part of yourself, so that you're not pushing it away, because the more you reject it, the more it gets reinforced.
Listen, if they come out with some natural way, that isn't Botox to whatever, sign me up, right?
Yeah.
I'm like, I mean, I see my facial person that does her magic, right?
Yeah.
So it's natural, I'm not. So yeah, would I prefer that, I didn't have the forehead wrinkles? Absolutely, right?
Mm.
And I'm not willing to harm myself. What I know would be harmful for me, my body, and the way my body works with foreign substances, I'm not willing to do that, because in trying to make that part of me that I'm rejecting comfortable. I have enough self-love that won't let me just comfort her, right? But I see 22-year-olds that don't have it getting stuff done nowadays, because they're being driven by this I'm not right, I'm not right, I'm not perfect enough image.
Right.
And the reality is that we're going to age.
Yeah.
So, and bodies do go through a change. Now, do they have to completely fall apart? I don't believe so.
No.
But the more we live in push, and the more we live in burnout, the faster that we are making them fall apart.
Yes, right? Absolutely. And I think the other piece that you said, the other phrase that you said, I thought was really key and may really be an awareness aha for people, is how we're harmful to ourselves.
Yes.
Why would, I mean, like, if you really think about it, why would you ever harm yourself?
Right.
It seems like, oh, if you say that to somebody, like, oh, I'm not going to harm myself. Oh, but how do you do that? Right. Because there was maybe someone in your childhood who harmed you, or who scared you, or pissed you off. But the thing is that you don't have to continue it.
Well, very often we are now playing the role of the person to ourselves, of the person that if we told the story would be the most like, oh, this terrible thing that happened to me. We're now playing that role to ourselves. If you watch your voices, you're now the one that's telling yourself you're not good enough. You're not lovable enough. You're not safe. You're not, all these stories. We now become that voice. We become the perpetrators, right? Yep. Don't realize it, and we're doing it in service to these old, outdated programs, and that's why I call them outdated. They're not helping us anymore.
Wow.
They're not, and they're pushing us into burnout, and I see it. Every person that I work with, this is the work that I'm doing. We are looking at their health. We're looking at the stress on their physical body, and we're looking at the choices that are driving that stress. We're looking at the choices that are making you a good host for chronic fungal infections, parasite infections, or SIBO, right? Because all of these things, these things live in an environment that is good for them.
Yes, absolutely.
And so the way we're in push and the way our system is being drained is what's making us a good host for these things.
Wow.
Right?
Wow.
So
I never thought of it that way before, but we're actually creating the environment for, like, by burning ourselves out, we're actually creating the internal environment for these diseases and these things to actually thrive. Like,
yeah. And that, I'm going to say one thing, because it's really tricky when we say we are creating.
Oh, okay.
No blame. No, it's fine. It is true. We are. And there's no blame. To blame oneself for what's going on, you can't blame yourself for something you don't know.
Right.
If I sat and blamed myself for my health journey, my goodness, I would function, right? There's not blame. It's like so easy to get into blame, say someone has cancer or something. There's no
Right.
blame here. And
You're right. 100%.
we can make choices that make it so that this body can thrive instead of be at the effect of whatever is going on. And burnout, that's why when you reached out to me about this summit, I was so excited. Yes, living in burnout, we're spending more resources than we're able to generate. We are creating an environment for dis-ease to exist.
Right.
Right. Worked out adrenals are a major cause of every illness that I work with.
Right. Wow.
Is preventative medicine.
Right.
Somebody is talking about the most important thing is learning how to live where we're regenerating and spending equally, and we're not overspending, taking from our reserves and leading to burnout.
And I just feel like we've gone full circle because we've just gotten back to the top where we are getting curious. Right? Instead of blaming, we can go curious as what does this have to teach me? What is this trying to tell me that I need to do differently? Or, what is that voice? So it's really great how I feel like we've gone around like a circle and we're back to the top again of being curious. Yeah. And, again, Dr. Cari, I have to say, thank you so much. This has been such an amazing interview because you've given us such a huge viewpoint, where to start from, getting curious, being able to ask the right questions, have the dialogue, really make those choices, and take our health into our hands and be responsible for it, not blame the emotions or ourselves or anything, and really come from that place of love and acceptance. And not push, right?
Yeah. Can I add one thing to that?
Yeah.
If someone is in burnout and they're having a health issue, that health issue has to be met on the physical as well. So
right.
Not going to, there are miracle cases where, miraculous cures can happen. But for the most part, we've got to, find a good practitioner. We've got to work with somebody to really get the body back on track. Right? The body will need some support while we are also addressing this other piece. So I just want to say that I don't want people to think, it's all just the emotional realm and then we're done. You do need to get some physical support. If you're already at that point where you're in burnout, get the physical support, find out what's going on, get your digestion taken care of, get your adrenals taken care of, get whatever else is going on balanced out while you're doing the work towards getting out of push on the emotional realm. They do go together. It's
absolutely. That's like the best, final comment of like the one thing that we want everybody to remember, like, don't forget that there's a whole, there's that physical level as well as the emotional level, and they both work together. So again, Dr. Cari, thank you so much. And I also want to remind everybody that you do get the free gift that Dr. Cari is offering, and it is an audio program that is even more in depth than what we've gone through today. And it's going to help you take what you've just learned and what you've just heard to an even greater level. And I highly recommend just click the link and you'll be able to get that information from her. And I also want to remind everybody that she's also a part of our VIP Backstage Pass bonus. So if you haven't signed up yet for our Backstage Pass, you have until midnight tonight to get the early bird pricing of $47. And after that, the price goes up. But you still have time now to get into the Backstage Pass and also get that bonus offer. And I, again, want to remind you later on today, you'll hear the recap as well as have an opportunity to ask any questions. And we really look forward to helping you and supporting you through your burnout solution. Because the thing that I really, really love to have people remember is that you have the opportunity to really, instead of burning your candle at both ends, you can let your light burn brightly, knowing that you are more than enough. And most importantly, that you can create your own burnout solution and you don't have to do it alone. So I'll see you in the next awesome interview and we'll see you there. Thanks again, Dr. Cari.